Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's edition of Aydt Picks. You know it, but first, coffee. So, for my 5-minute segment this week of Aydt Bites and coffee, we are going to go over William the Conqueror, King of England. Have any of y'all watched the show Vikings? If you have, you know of the Viking sagas of that tell about the Viking rulers, and the show portrays some of the famous Viking chieftains throughout the Viking heyday from like the 8th century to the 11th century, roughly early 12th, somewhere in there. But most historians note that 1066 AD, during the High Middle Ages, which was the period from 1000 to 1300, was where the Viking Age ended. And it ended because of an English king named Harold Godwinson. And King Harold defeated one of the Viking leaders who tried to invade England in 1066. Up around York, actually. And he was the last Viking chieftain to invade England. But more or less, the Vikings invaded England and terrorized all of Northern Europe on and off for about 400 years. And so the Viking chieftain that Harold Godwinson ended up defeating and killed, made him solidified his reign as king, or so he thought. Ironically, one of Rollo, yes, the Rollo from the Vikings, who became ruler of Normandy, which is in northern France, hence Normandy Beach, the Normandy landings of D-Day. Yeah, that historical area was known as Normandy, and it was a Viking vassal state before Rollo, as Rollo secured it in exchange with an agreement from Charlemagne's father, Pepin the Short, that he would stop attacking the middle part of France, which included sailing ships up the Seine River and attacking their kingdom, if Pepin would give Rollo and his descendants the land of Normandy. And that was in 711 AD, somewhere around there. 911. Fast forward 200 years. That's my bad. So Rollo gets married, has kids, descendants. His great-great-great-grandson was known as William of Normandy. William became known as William the Conqueror because of his brutality. So he would go and invade England and eventually defeat, within 2 weeks of, remember Harold Godwinson, the King of England, in his victory over the last Viking raid, he had to deal with one of the Vikings' descendants who was on the throne of, who was the head of the state of Normandy. And so William the Conqueror ended up invading England and killed Harold Godwinson at the Battle of Hastings in 1066 AD, and then went to London, proclaimed the throne for himself, was crowned king at Westminster Abbey. And William was a feared warrior, but he ended up getting really fat, and he pillaged and shut down all of his opposition for the next 21 years until he died. So in 1087, he was riding his horse, and he was really fat. Like, he was a conqueror and a muscular dude. But before then, William was gluttonous. He had servants. He had people that took care of him, and he could barely fit on his horse. He was so fat. And so one time he was riding, his horse stopped. Like, basically, William would have ate it if it was a car. He probably would have flown through the windshield or hit his head on the windshield. But the horse's saddle, when it stopped, ended up rupturing William's belly. And he had a long and agonizing death in which his wound got so infected that nobody wanted to be around him because he stunk so bad. And to make matters worse, at his funeral at Rouen Cathedral in northern France, in modern-day Normandy, you can still see his gravesite. It's still there in the almost 1,000-year-old cathedral. He has his tomb there. And when the people that faceted the tomb for him ended up making it, they didn't account for how fat he was. And so, because he was already stinking and people just wanted to get out of there, they buried him really quickly. And when they did that, they put the cement slab over his already bloated and decaying body, and it busted his guts. Like, they exploded. And so the smell was even more disgusting, more pungent, that apparently people didn't want to be around his tomb for a few years after that. But that's the story of William the Conqueror. He's an interesting guy to read about. Oh gosh, I probably went over my time for that, but like I said, I'm passionate about history, and it's really hard for me to stop when I'm passionate about something. So, at any rate, on to the picks. There's not really a lot of great games this weekend, to tell you the truth. I don't think there's any top 5 matchups. As far as I can see, the best matchup is going to be either Texas A&M at Missouri or BYU at Texas Tech. That's another good one. And Oregon and Iowa. But we're going to start with tomorrow night's game. USC hosts Northwestern out in LA. Northwestern's pretty bad. USC had a few early losses, but they're coming around. They're coached by Lincoln Riley, whose name has been mentioned a little bit in the Florida search. I don't know if he would fit in here, even though that guy's a quarterback whisperer. He coached Baker Mayfield, and he coached Kyler Murray, amongst some other big names. He coached 3 players to the Heisman. But he just can't seem to get over the hump. One of the years at Oklahoma, he lost in the semifinal. That was probably the best year, so he's turning it into like the West Coast James Franklin. Just chokes whenever the big games are played. But he's a good coach. I wouldn't mind seeing him at Florida. I don't know how true those rumors are. And I don't know if he could get it done in the SEC either. That's the only other worry. But at any rate, USC should have no problem with Northwestern. They beat them 45-24. I've got the Ohio State Buckeyes playing a pitiful Purdue team. Purdue doesn't really generate a lot of offense. They get shut out a lot. It's kind of like Wisconsin. Those two have regressed in the past couple of years, especially since Jeff Brom left Purdue for his alma mater at Louisville. I think Ohio State plays another cupcake in Purdue and gets another shutout victory. Both score 52-0. Staying in the Big Ten, we go to not so happy Valley. Expectations were sky high this year, and of course Penn State freaking hit that ceiling and fell to the floor because now they're as bad as the Florida Gators. Penn State is 3-5. They fired their coach, and they're wondering what's going to come for the rest of the season. Bad news for them is they run into the buzzsaw. After playing Ohio State last week, they've got successively the number 1 and number 2 teams in the land. Number 2, of course, being Indiana. They're playing at home, but I don't think it's going to matter because Indiana is just kicking butt and taking names right now. Indiana will destroy Penn State and send them to 3-6. And hopefully Penn State finds somebody that makes them competitive again, because it's going to be a rough rest of the season for Penn State. Moving on, this game looked interesting, but I think Texas A&M is just too good. And honestly, I think top to bottom, Texas A&M is the best team in the nation. I'm going to go out on a limb and be bold and say I'd put Texas A&M over Ohio State the way they're playing. They go into Missouri. Coach Drinkwitz has turned that program around. However, Missouri had last few games has kind of slid down a little bit. I think it's going to be a close game initially, and then the depth of Texas A&M just wears Missouri down. Look for this game to be like, probably 21-14 at half. But I think Texas A&M ends up wearing out Missouri in the second half. I'm going to say Texas A&M beats Missouri at Como. That's Columbia, Missouri, by the score of 42-21. This one, in most regular years, game day would be here. Major SEC rivalry, formerly SEC West. But it's going away next year in LSU and Bama due to the 3 permanent opponents. Bama's are going to be Auburn, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. So they won't include LSU. But Alabama's playing lights out. Honestly, since that Florida State game, they've taken it to people. I think they beat LSU at home. This game will be lower scoring, and I think Alabama finally pulls away in the second half. In the fourth quarter. I think they score a late touchdown to stretch the game out a little bit. But I think they solidify it, and they put the final nail in the coffin in like the last 2 minutes. Ty Simpson drives them down there. And I think they beat LSU by a score of 31-20. Number 5, the luckiest team in the land, the Georgia Bulldogs. Catch or no catch, I think it was a catch. Georgia beat us, so you can't go back, and regardless of what you say, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the game, the scoreboard read Georgia 24, Florida 20. So Georgia clearly won the cocktail party. Florida can try again next year and maybe not have such boneheaded calls late in the game. But we almost had Georgia, and I'm still a little butthurt about that. But we're this close. We'll get them next year. With that being said, Georgia goes into Starkville, Mississippi, plays Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a little better, but Georgia's offense is really good, and they're playing decent enough on defense, which is uncharacteristic of a Kirby Smart team, that their defense has given up a lot of points this year, as many points as they have. But I think Georgia will be in control of this game all game. They won't have to win it in the last 5 minutes like they have with several games this year. I think that they beat Mississippi State by a score of 34-21. Ole Miss taking a ride over to Oxford from Starkville. They play the Citadel, and the Grove is going to be rocking. I think Ole Miss hangs 65 on the Citadel, beats them 65-14. This is probably where game day is going to be, out at Lubbock, Texas. You've got undefeated BYU, number 7 in the land, playing Texas Tech, who is 7-1. I'm looking forward to this one. I think it goes into overtime, and I think BYU kicks a field goal, and Texas Tech misses theirs. And BYU wins by a score of 38-35. Number 9, the Oregon Ducks, going into number 20, Iowa, in Iowa City. That place, I've heard, is a tough place to play. I've never been there, but they do sit pretty close to the sidelines, and they're pretty noisy. They got a lot of great traditions there, including the wave to the kids at the hospital, which is really cool. I think it'll probably be a close game initially, but I think the Oregon athletes will take over. And number 9, Oregon, defeats number 20, Iowa, by a score of 27-13. For my upset pick of the week, honestly, because I do an upset pick every show, I had to pick this one because this makes the most sense to me. Normally, I would have Notre Dame winning, but this is a classic rivalry and anything can happen. Navy's not bad this year. They're 7-1. Granted, they've played some garbage teams. But I think this game comes down to a field goal. It's going to be 31-31. The Navy kicker lines up to kick a 55-yard field goal. There's the snap. The ball is set. The kicker lines up. Kick is up. And it is good. Barely clearing the upright. Just sneaks over the bar. I think Navy defeats Notre Dame by a score of 34-31. Moving on, we've got number 14, Virginia, who's having a pretty good year. They play Wake Forest who got humiliated by the team out west last week. Virginia's playing at home. I don't think they should struggle. I think they beat Wake Forest by a score of 38-7. Number 15, Louisville plays Cal Berkeley. They win by a score of 46-21. Number 16, Vanderbilt, having a very impressive year. Now, I like Clark Lee, and I give him a lot of credit for doing what he's doing at his alma mater. But you wonder how much, at the end of the day, that has to do with Diego Pavia more than it does Clark Lee. We shall see next year. I think if Vanderbilt has as much success next year without Pavia as they did this year and part of last year, then Clark Lee will be getting poached by the big schools in the openings next year. But poor Vanderbilt. I mean, not poor Vanderbilt, poor Auburn. They're peaking down as Vanderbilt's had their best year since the 1940s. So I think Vanderbilt will take Auburn seriously, even though Auburn's bad. And they win this game solidly by the score of 28-10. Number 18, the U. We've got Miami hosting Syracuse. This is a classic rivalry, especially if you've watched college football your whole life like me. You remember in the early 90s when these two were in the Big East and Syracuse was actually really good, like competing for championships year in and year out. Those were the two big dogs on the old Big East. Like early to mid 90s, Syracuse was one of the top dogs in college football, and they ran that option. Donovan McNabb was part of that team. They used to tear people up. And Syracuse and Miami were huge rivals then, because you knew the winner of that had the inside track in the Big East. And those were fun games to watch too. But Miami's doing a lot better than Syracuse is this year, despite falling on their face in mid-season form like I had predicted. I thought that they were the best team in the land and a serious playoff contender about a month ago. But the tables have turned. For Miami to be the old school U again, they need to finish the season instead of running out of gas. But I do think they defeat Syracuse and they blow them out in Coral Gables by a score of 44-13. Number 23, Washington, the Huskies. They go to Wisconsin. Jed Fish, their head coach, obviously, if you've watched my show before, he's a Florida alum and he coached under Spurrier here as a graduate assistant. His name's being mentioned as a potential if we swing and miss on Lane and one of the other big names. Shoot, honestly, like, in my opinion, the fact that he has ties here, that gives him a leg up over a lot of other people. Jed Fish would probably be like the third or fourth person I'd call if Lane Kiffin says no, if Jeff Brom says no, or if Brent Key says no. I would probably, because this guy, like, he bleeds orange and blue. He gets the University of Florida, and he's doing well at Washington. They're 6-2, I believe. Got a good offensive mind, learned under the best with Spurrier. I think they beat Wisconsin by the score of 49-20 in Camp Randall. Florida versus Kentucky. I'm not going to lie. This is a weird rivalry. And I call it a rivalry because I didn't realize this, but Florida and Kentucky have been playing for 78. This will be the 78th year straight. Because initially I was kind of mad about us keeping Kentucky on the schedule and taking off LSU, since our rivalry with LSU is more heated. And also because we've been playing LSU since 1971. What I didn't realize until I looked it up was, in fact, that we've played Kentucky since 1947. That's insane. And also, this rivalry is good because it transcends onto the basketball court. And Kentucky is a basketball school, and so are we as far as I'm concerned. As a matter of fact, we're playing right now. I have my score up in the window, and Florida's winning 73-50 over North Florida, by the way, with 10 minutes left, 10 minutes, 36 seconds left. But this rivalry is funny because Florida has owned Kentucky in football, and we had beat them 31 years straight until Dan Mullen lost to them in 2018. I call Kentucky fans crazy for wanting to fire Mark Stoops. That guy is the best coach Kentucky's ever had. He's probably going to be, I'd say probably besides Hal Mummy and Bear Bryant, but Bear Bryant wasn't what he was until he got to Alabama. Texas A&M first and then Alabama after Kentucky. But the first stop Bear Bryant coached was Kentucky. But anyway, Mark Stoops and Hal Mummy are up there at Bear Bryant. Hal Mummy didn't have a winning record, but he at least made that offense exciting with Jared Lorenzen and the Mike Leach air raid up there. They were fun to watch in the late 90s, early 2000s. But Mark Stoops wins you games. One year he had Kentucky. He's busted through the ceiling of expectations for that program as far as I'm concerned. That's a basketball school, and he's made y'all at least respected in college football. And especially in a conference like the SEC, which is top to bottom America's toughest conference. Like, Kentucky used to be a laughingstock in football, like Vanderbilt. Both of them have gotten better, obviously, but always traditionally, year in and year out, you knew Kentucky was a W. Especially growing up in the 90s. Now, there were some games that were closer than they should have been, but for the most part, when you're playing Kentucky, especially under Spurrier and Meyer, you knew it was going to be a W. Kentucky didn't really start getting competitive until like the McElwain time frame. That's when Stoops first got there, and then obviously Dan Mullen's first year, he beat us at the Swamp and ended Kentucky's 31-year misery to us. It's been kind of back and forth since then. Kentucky actually had a streak of 3 straight until we ended it last year. So really, Kentucky fans, why would you want to get rid of that guy? Yeah, he's the best thing. I mean, he brought y'all to a new level of expectations. I don't understand the thinking in that. And I think 2 years ago, even they were second place in the SEC East. Of course, Georgia was a powerhouse, but and made it to the SEC championship game. But I mean, that was Kentucky's year. If Georgia was even average, Kentucky could have gone to the SEC championship game, and that would have even been a new ceiling of expectations. So, yeah, I don't understand the thought of getting rid of Mark Stoops. But this is a fun rivalry. Florida obviously plays Georgia, Kentucky, and South Carolina as their permanent rivals. I don't really get the South Carolina one so much at all, and I've got reasons for that. I think we should have kept either LSU or Tennessee. That's an explanation for another time. But I think, go on to the game, I think Florida I think this game will be close. Kentucky, I believe, will even have the lead. I think it'll be probably like a 6-6 game at halftime. I think it'll be an exchange of field goals. I'm sorry. To go with my score, I think Kentucky will probably have like let's say, it'll be 10-10 at halftime. And slow third quarter into the fourth quarter, I'm going to say Kentucky gets up a lead on us, 13-10. And I'm going to say Florida goes down and pulls together, shows a lot of grit and heart in doing this. And the last minute, DJ Lagway leads us down the field. And I'm going to say we score a touchdown on a hard run by Baugh from the goal line with about 30 seconds left. And Florida ices the game and beats Kentucky 17-13. It's going to be cold up there too. That's to Kentucky's advantage, but I think Florida pulls this one out. I'm going to pick Florida to win. For the other D1 Florida schools, Clemson and FSU have fallen hard. They used to be the creams of the crops in the ACC in the 2010s and I guess even early 2020s. I think Clemson wins this because they're playing at home and the players will rally behind Dabo. I think Clemson beats FSU in it's somewhat of a high-scoring affair, by a score of 45-37. I've got USF over UTSA by a score of 33-22. I've got Houston over UCF, Central Florida, by the score of 21-17. I've got Florida International over Middle Tennessee by a score of 27-24. And I've got Florida Atlantic over Tulsa by the score of 47-40. For my bonus game, this will be the latest game at night. I'm going to say it's going to be entertaining as all get out. I've got Hawaii playing San Diego State out in Hawaii. I'm going to say this game goes into 10 overtimes. It's going to be 43-43 to begin the game, but Hawaii wins. They break the NCAA record with the amount of overtimes, and Hawaii beats San Diego State by a score of 63-61. So let me talk about NIL for a minute and why the transfer portal and NIL are ruining college football. So back before, I think they started with the transfer portal like 2018 or something, and then NIL probably like 4 years ago. Before then, the athletes took pride in the school. I've never been for playing, this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I've never been for paying the players. For one, it shows a discrepancy, like it's unfair for the other athletes who are in sports that aren't as popular. But yet, for example, you have a world-class swimmer at the University of Florida who becomes an Olympian later, has an overall better career, but why don't they get paid as much as a 5-star recruit who will burn out and not go to the NFL or not do well in the NFL, or even go to the NFL at all? Um, and also, like, it ruins the game from the standpoint of college football is unique. You play for the school. You play for the University of Florida, for example. This logo, it used to be like so special. Florida, like the recruiting wars. You want this guy to come to your school to come. It used to be about education as well, getting a good education. That's hence the scholarships. That means your education is paid for. You get to go to school and you get to play sports too, and then you get a career like everyone else. The NFL, even with NIL, it's only like 1 to 2% of college players that even make it to the NFL. So, say, for example, these kids get paid millions of dollars to go to a school, and let's face it, 18-year-old kids, most of them aren't spending money wisely. So say they blow that NIL check and don't make the NFL, and they're like, hey, screw this education. I mean, like if they drop out or they don't take their education seriously because they think they'll have that money, what is that really teaching them? They're going to be out of their luck. Education was free regardless. And then room and board, they got room and board before then, and they were actually college students as opposed to athletes first. Now I don't even know, of course you're still going to call it college football, but it's gotten so far away from that. Like, you used to play for school pride. Now it's evolved into some kind of like minor league, with this name, image, and likeness stuff. And it's ruining college football. It really is, because another school can say, hey, I'm going to pay this player to leave his loyalties and the school he committed to pay him more money to come here. It just kind of cheapens the value of that person, I think, as well. And the young professional that the coach and the school are hoping to develop that player into as an individual, as a person. And the fact that the transfer portal is so easy to jump into now. Like, these kids aren't developing either as athletes at the school because they can't stand to sit on the bench for like a year and develop. If another school offers them more money, they're going to go to that school. And it's not a guarantee they even start. I mean, they can say that, but then they offer somebody else the same amount of money. See, it's not the same. And then money is morphing the game into being, into playing for, like, it's morphing into the NFL model. Like, if I was a betting man, I'd say probably in 10 years from now, you're just going to have super conferences, like the Big Ten is doing. There's going to be the SEC. I don't imagine the SEC going away. But tell me what sense it makes to add teams. The Big Ten is already like the Big 18 now, even though they still keep the Big Ten. And things don't make geographic sense anymore either because of money. They want to get teams in for money, and all of that comes to play, so they can add numbers to the conferences. And so that's why you have California schools that are like literally on the Pacific Ocean, like Cal Berkeley and Stanford, who are in the Atlantic Coast Conference. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and it's just ruining the game. Like, geography is not, conferences don't make sense anymore. That's what I'm afraid it's turning into because of money and TV deals. That's it. I'll always be a college football fan, but it's just losing what's special about it. And then you have all these asshole freaking athletic directors and that want to buy coaches and outbid other schools for coaches, and they want to renovate stadiums because just to be with the trend of comfort. And you've heard my argument about why the swamp shouldn't change. But everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses, as they say, and they want to have the next big thing. But it's ruining football, and I will not be happy if Scott Strickland ruins the swamp. Because you don't go to the swamp for comfort. You go to the swamp to make the other team and their fans as uncomfortable as possible. I don't go to the swamp for comfort. When I go to a Gator game, I expect to get dirty and sweaty and for my ears to ring because of how loud it is. That's part of the fun. I don't go there to sit in a premium suite and eat hot dogs and sit in air condition and whatever, drink beer. I don't go to the game for my comfort, is what I'm saying. And I'm not sure if Scott Strickland gets that. He's not from the culture of the University of Florida, though, and I am, so, and many other Gator fans are. But anyway, that's my rant for the night. I hope y'all have a good night and enjoy watching college football this weekend. Be safe. Aydt signing off. God bless.